My name is Seb. I'm from a marketing agency called TimeZoneOne, based here in Christchurch and in Chicago in North America, weirdly enough. We do a lot of tourism marketing, but also a spread of other bits and pieces. This year, the last few months, a heavy focus for me has been going around the South Island helping train tourism businesses with digital marketing. It's part of a program that Qualmark's delivering. I can see a few people here who have already been on that. Hopefully it's not too repetitive. I'm doing new things today as well. And what I've been asked to come along today to talk about is probably my favourite part of marketing, which is about developing brands, branding, identity, that kind of thing. Finding your audience, finding what it is that's special about your various businesses, and coming up with ways to connect the two, introduce the two alongside each other. So I do talk a little bit in the context of how you might actually go around advertising, promoting, that kind of thing, but primarily today it's about the foundation of who it is you are as a business and the image you put out there, how you sound, all that kind of thing, and how you connect with your businesses and that kind of thing. So having again done a few of these kinds of workshops recently, albeit on different topics and stuff, I found probably one of the best things that people take away from it is being able to talk with others who are in the room, to learn from them, to share experiences and that sort of thing. So as we go, I'm hopefully going to be able to turn it over to you, maybe in small groups. I know we're kind of sitting facing this way, but hopefully a chance to chat with the folks around you about some things. Then in a couple of days' time, we're going to send you out a little bit of a workbook. Rather than giving it to you today, it's good to have a couple of days to think about things, go away, and then put down a few things as your strategy. So we're going to do a follow-up to fill in a few blanks, come up with ideas, and make sure you stay on track later on. The other reason I do that is that I think a lot of this stuff is really good if you chat through it with your team, if you're lucky enough to have a team. I know there might be some solo operators in the room as well who are on that. We're going to pitch it at all those levels there that might be effective. What else do I need to say? Nothing. I'll dive straight into the presentation. If you have questions or would like to share anything as we go, please do. Again, I'm very good at talking at people for ages, but sometimes it's nice to be able to go back and forth as well. So please chip in as we go. I would go for like introduction and stuff, but I realise the room is quite big and a lot of you may already know each other. So I hope to be able to meet some of you later on as we go through it. So covering today oh man, I'm flipping through already. Here we go. The branding fundamentals to build your business by connecting with the audiences that matter. I say business, there might be non-for-profits in the room or other community organisations, that kind of thing. Not 100% sure, but this insert organisation or whatever else might work within business. So talking a little bit about the fundamentals of branding, understanding who your audience is, who you are, what you offer, how you might influence and persuade your different audiences, finding a distinct voice for your business or organisation, developing a visual identity, getting it all down in one place, and then communicating it with your team, with other stakeholders, that kind of thing, and matching it all up. But the purpose today is to It's about building your business or organisation and connecting with the audiences. It's a two-side thing. It's not just about projecting stuff out there, it's about understanding the audience and knowing what's going to influence, persuade them, and so on. So at the start of any of these things, you have to go through and say, what is the thing we're actually talking about? I don't have a good dictionary definition for this, but what I can say is that brand started off with this kind of thing. We do the history right back in Egypt. The brand started off as, yes, it is actually a physical brand. It's a thing that you would put into your cattle and put your mark on there. This is my cattle. And now today you probably think of that kind of thing maybe as a brand. It's a logo, it's a thing you stick on something that says something. It says, this is mine. This is the visual stamp of a company or the company itself. Sometimes we talk about a brand as being a company. A car company can be a brand. A food company can be a brand, and so on. We'll get a little bit more nuanced on what we're talking on in a moment. So the quick history lesson from there, it went on to other things. Way back when, you'd have your local blacksmith, you'd have your local tailor or whoever it is. Everyone was in your village. You knew their reputation, you knew who they were. You didn't need a brand on things, but eventually people travelled from village to village. They came along and needed to be able to say, we're different, we stand out, you can trust us. And that is where brands evolved to. And then eventually they went even wider than that. And the oldest commercial brand still running, with a few asterisks after it in terms of how old it actually is Stella Artois, who claim at the very top there that they've been there since 1366. And part of that is true. They carry that horn that's been in their logo since the very start. What they don't classify is that it didn't actually become Artois until about 1708, when a fellow called Sebastian Artois took over the brewery, and then in 1926 it became Stella Artois. So not that old. The true oldest logo currently used in the world is Twinings. This is their first logo, and if you've got a box of Twinings in your cupboard, it probably looks a lot like this kind of thing. 1787 this started, and still basically the same thing today. So yes, when we're talking about brands, you're thinking about something that looks like this, or the 15 most trusted brands in New Zealand. It's about the logo and all that kind of thing and everything that carries with it. But today what we're talking about isn't just this element. It's that a brand is more than just a logo. It's a lot of things that go in part of the mix. With our brand, we encapsulate who we are. We distinguish ourselves from the competition. You know, you should want your brand to feel like people are somewhat familiar with it. Like if you're a tourism operator, people can see kind of shorthand, oh yes, this is what you are. If you're a producer, okay, we can see, yes, vaguely this is about food or whatever it might be that you create. But then you need to break those conventions to stand out a bit more. The more different you are, the bigger the risk, but the bigger the potential reward from it. The designer of Coca-Cola's bottle, Raymond Lowy, he said it's the Maya principle, M-A-Y-A, the most advanced yet acceptable, pushing a brand as far as you can while people will still recognise what it is and want to do business with you. So every time you come up with a brand, you need to have that question of how much are you the same as your competitors, and how much do you make things different, and how do you make those things different? And it's the golden question for everyone. If it was that easy, we'd all be able to make ourselves stand out, and we'd instantly connect with every audience, and everything would be golden. The reality is somewhat more complex about that. But the brand should be about putting everything great about us in the spotlight and supporting it with all the stuff that's pretty good. So part of today is identifying and prioritizing the stuff that really makes you stand out, and more importantly, how it stands out for your audience. Because some of it might be the things that you think are absolutely awesome about you, but it's got to be what's going to resonate with your audience ultimately and make a difference with them. So if the brand's not just a logo, what is it? Well, it's everything that who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Or putting it another way, a bit of jargon in here, the brand becomes the signified and the signifiers. Basically it means your meaning and the things you use to deliver that meaning or amplify that meaning. So typically when we talk about rebranding or sticking our brand on something, it's this lower stuff, it's signifiers, it's your logo, it's colours, voice, imagery, all those kinds of things. But what it really needs to be carrying is why you're in business, What's your purpose? How do you stand out from someone else? What's your values? What's your story? What's your history? How do you position yourself in the market to stand out? Which actually was the same as those brands in the first place. The brand said, "This is my cow. Don't steal my cow. If you see someone with my cow, they have stolen the cow or possibly bought it." So it was never just about the logo or something. It's about all those meanings that carry on through. If I'm making a pavlova, it's not just about the cream and the berries on the top, it's the substance underneath. It's all the ingredients. It's the eggs, it's the sugar. If I've got it horribly wrong, it's flour, not meant to be in a pavlova, but you could have something that's wildly different there. So the brand needs to speak to all of these different types of things, but just to throw a spanner in the works, the brand is not really just this. It comes down to people. This is not your advertising agency, but this is typically how a lot of those look. Your brand is the total emotional experience a customer has with your company and its product or service. It's how your customers perceive it, or how your potential customers perceive it. It's how they think about it. And that kind of sucks because you don't have control on that. They add in all these bits and pieces that are their own perception of it, their own feelings. Like if I say Coca-Cola, the most successful modern brand in the world, arguably, certainly the most well-known around the world, you have different images into your head. For some of you, Coca-Cola is the devil, it's sugar, it's destroying our teeth, it will clean the rust off something if you pour it in, etc. For others, it's fond memories, it's refreshing, all that kind of thing. For me, I think of Coke, I think of two memories in my childhood. One, when we had a particularly hot and busy day cleaning the garden with the neighbours and getting a 2-litre bottle of Coke, or collecting the Christmas cans from Mobile in 1996. That is my perception and construction of the brand, and nothing Coke does or says is going to alter that in my mind. It's all very well easy saying for Coke. I know there are smaller businesses and it's a little bit different there. Point being is that where does it leave us? If those things are created in the audience's mind, how do you change it? That turns into giving your audience all the tools, all the pointers, everything they need to make the connections in their mind, to shape them, to, I'm not going to say manipulate them, but it kind of is manipulating them ultimately. And to do that, you need to move from looking from the outside, looking out from the inside and thinking about how do I want to talk to, what do I want to tell people about, what do I want to share, how do I want to get sales, to looking in from the outside and thinking how you're perceived. How does my audience see me? What do they need in life? How does my offering link up with what they need? Essentially, you influence, persuade, and shape the perception your ideal customer has using all those tools and tricks at your disposal. This is the Kennesa's triangle. It's always good to get a couple of diagrams going in a workshop. They call it the Kennesa's triangle, but there's no triangle there at all, of course. Like, it's the void, it's there. We see something in our mind though, we connect it. And it's the same thing ultimately with your brand. You are connecting things up, and then you hope your audience is able to see that image, see them what you want to see. You need to get them to see the triangle. And so today, we're covering all these little circles and bits and pieces that you can connect up to hopefully show them the brand that you want. And to do that, we have to start off, before we go into what makes your businesses special and talking about that, I want to be able to talk about your customers, or your clients, or your stakeholders, or your visitors, and whatever it might be for your particular business. Knowing who your customers are will help you define the way you approach your brand. And so ideally, they should be at the centre of everything you do. And you probably have a fairly good idea of who those people might be. Can I get an example of anyone of who an absolute key customer for you might be?
Female, 18 to 30.
Yep. And why that? How have you identified that particular customer?
That's what comes horse riding.
People comes horse riding. Yep. Any ones that stick out for you, or people who have more than one key audience?
Traditional couples,
Yep.
people on conference.
Yep. Are there any audiences that people want to grow that they have some of, but think they could have more of at some point? Yeah? Yeah. Any ones that you've particularly identified or think that you could talk to?
We run a number of different ones, different things for different target audience, so we're really specialised.
Yeah. And in most cases, people will have multiple audiences. What I'm talking there as we talk around this today is that it's not just about maximising who you currently have, but thinking where else you can build those audiences and how you speak to them in an effective way, because that it does come down to how you position your brand, how you talk, that kind of thing. So the trick that most brands do to create this is by using something like an audience profile or a customer persona or that kind of thing. So in a head we know we've got the young females 18 to 34, whoever it is, or those audiences. But having that down on paper is something that fleshes it out, can be really effective for thinking about how you market yourself, how you talk, and where you could expand your business. And it also helps you become a little bit more personalised, because in reality, when you're out there with marketing, mass marketing, you're talking to a lot of people. And we know when we look at a website as a visitor, yes, this is going out to everyone, but ideally we try and fool them into thinking we are just talking to the one person. When you have what feels like a personal connection with a brand, you're more likely to take action. So the way we do that is with something called personas, which are fictional representations of your target audiences. This is an example of some that we created for the state of Illinois. They don't always have to be all designed up like this, but they can be helpful tools just to have on hand. These remind you to do things based on what your customer wants, which might not be exactly the same as what you would want or what you think they might want. It allows us to go a little bit deeper and think about what motivates them. How do they like to be spoken to? What images do they want to see? What's going to persuade them? So going into an example of one we created, which is Nora and Brian. We're able to put them with a demographic, so age, gender, that kind of thing. But we also tell a little bit of a story about them. This is what gets them out of bed in the morning. This is their motivation for doing something. This is the kind of stories you can share with them. This is the kind of imagery that they like. And ultimately, this is the opportunity that you can get from them for your business. In this case, it was inspiring them to get out of town for the weekend more often, showing them all the cool things they can do in their backyard. Last minute deals may motivate this group to stay overnight. So we know that our business goal in this case was to get people booking accommodation, staying more nights, going for longer visits. By tying this up with a persona, we can say, well, what's going to push them into doing that? And then it helps guide our brand, what we talk about and what we share. And I think that was some of the things that we covered in that Christchurch NZ workshop as well, if you're looking for the deeper dive into how to do these things. Closer to home, creating one for a florist in a gift shop. Karen, I promise this was named before Karen became a bit of a cliche on these things. Apologies to any Karens in the room as well. So this was a bit of a story about the things that she likes in life, what motivates her, what's interesting to her, the demographics that were in this audience for this brand and the other brands that this person follows. By looking at this, you get a stronger idea of who it is. And your marketing doesn't just become, we're putting this out to everyone. It's, we're talking to Karen. This is what she needs to know. This is what's going to motivate her. This is what's going to inspire her. This is what's going to persuade her, because that's what we need to make our brand, persuading someone, inspiring someone. Over in the States, for Navy Pier, we got these very short ones summarized for all these different types of audiences. So not just saying we're talking to one, but we had suburban people, we had urban, we had a donor because they took in donations and that kind of thing, and this gave them a view on it. And back before Skype was owned by Microsoft and part of its global conglomerate, they were a scrappy young startup who who wrote things around in a very personal way. So within their personas, they had it as if like they were being spoken to by their different customers. So this Skype user was, I'm 73, I got the hang of email a few years back and now there's no stopping me. I like Skype because it lets me keep in touch with my daughter in Uganda. The hard part is converting my grandkids, getting the kids onto using Skype and talking to them as well. This was turning it from saying, here I've just got a demographic or something, or here's who I think my customer is, into someone that you can actually imagine and talk to and go from there. So creating these things, it's about pulling together the information you already have. So you've got the anecdotal stuff. You know the people who come through the door, and those are probably the people you're looking to focus on. But there are other things you can draw into building these as well. Looking at the people who visit your website and that kind of thing, drawing analytics and those kinds of things. Talking with your team, if you're lucky to have a team, getting a better idea of the people who are on the front line there. Looking at emails, calls, letters, reviews, all those kinds of things that you get online. And then grouping them together in a way that makes sense. You can look at where they come from. You can look at how they like to do things and interact with your business, and what benefits they're trying to seek from you ultimately. What are they going to get out of the experience with you? And that attitudinal one is a big part of it, and we'll go into talking about that soon. But it comes down to, you have a thing you sell or offer, that's your product. But then there are other levels to it. Well, it's the benefit that person gets from it. That's ultimately what they're buying, or the emotional fulfillment, or whatever it might be. And that's where we start to fill it down with personas. You can pop those into, you can turn those then into individual personalities, like characters for a story. So those ones earlier looking at age, gender, location, income, education, that kind of thing, and so on. This is something I think is really good to, honestly, when we've been talking with tourism businesses this year, this has actually been probably the thing they've seen the biggest change in their marketing, doing something like this. So it is a really good exercise to do, particularly if you have a team. It's not just for the marketing point of view, but sometimes it helps put you on the same page when you had different perceptions of who your audience might be. But for this, given that you might have someone around you that you're not, that you haven't really spoken with before, I'm not sure, you might all know each other, but if we could just take a couple of minutes to have a little chat about who it is you think your key audiences are at the moment and how you market to them at the moment. What is it you say, and what more do you think you need to know about them to make a difference? So if you do know the person next to you, if you would find someone else for a couple of minutes, and then we'll head on to the next part of it. I mean, one example of, not sharing with the room, I was speaking to recently was a tour operator down south, and obviously, well, they were 100% international up until, things changed a little bit this year, and so then I've been figuring out how do I go to domestic and where's my differences on that. And so that roughly in the head, well, these are the people I've been talking to internationally, and this is the product I offer. So am I talking about the same benefits just for someone local? If I'm talking for someone local, well, their objections are, well, I don't want to go on a tour. I just show myself around and that kind of thing. But for them, it was suddenly, okay, when I've been typically talking to visitors, it's been older couples coming to the other side of the world on their own, kids have left home. But they've realised that the same product could now be spun as for families reconnecting. Maybe the kids have come home from overseas and reliving road trips of youth, but without anyone having to actually drive, having someone drive around for them. So the persona, which isn't something they've had before, became these are these families looking to reconnect with the kids and recreate something they had from when they were young. So still offering ostensibly the same product, just talking about it in a different way based on that new audience. So that in turn helps inspire their branding, their product delivery, and what they're talking about. Are there people who've had to talk with new audiences this year? I would imagine there'd be some out there. Examples? Yeah. Yep. All over. All right. Well, from having those audiences, and I do encourage you to think about how you can flesh those out a bit more, and that will be part of the workbook we send you after this. Then it comes into actually figuring out how you influence those audiences, and that is what we do with branding. Branding isn't just putting an image on something, it's about changing how we think and feel about something. I mean, it tells us about the product, but it hopefully inspires emotions and that kind of thing as well. Today, you've already made dozens of choices about your day. The toothpaste you use, your coffee, your breakfast, the car you drove to get here, or the bike you took to get here, the clothes you're wearing, your phone. These at some point were all a conscious purchase decision of a brand or something else. And to some extent, you've been influenced by something about that brand. Now, it might not be actually, having a brand name on something, but there was something about the quality, or it may just seem like a better product. Something sold you on it. Branding changes how we think and feel about it. And of course, like, you're savvy business operators and so on, and can see through advertising and see the tricks in it, but there will be still lots of things that have subconsciously influenced you along the way. Some of the things that we do, the choices we make, are based fully on rational things. So, you might have that rational choice: this is affordable, this is long-lasting, convenient, reliable, just the best option for me on the day, it's what's there. These are rational choices for picking something. And it's absolutely okay to promote a product or service along these lines. But it's not just about the rational, it's about the emotional. It's our unconscious mind, the occasionally irrational side, that sort of thing. Branding's meant to appeal, while there's that rational element, most of it's appealing to something below that. It's the same thing that controls, we breathe without thinking. We drive without having to think consciously about changing gears. It's all this stuff that goes on autopilot. Brands ultimately, big brands certainly, are appealing to that autopilot. It's helping us make decisions. One writer put it as that brands are the way to put people in the express checkout to buying something. Even the most rational people will buy based on their emotions. You buy the best because it gives you confidence in it. You buy the cheapest because you want to feel like you're getting good value off something. There are things we do by habit, and there are things that we do because other people do it. And then oftentimes we'll post-rationalize it. We'll say, well, I bought that big TV because it fills the room nicely, and because I like watching movies and that kind of thing. Or I bought those clothes because I need something else in my wardrobe, and that's a practical buy. Sometimes that's totally the case. A lot of other times it's an impulse. It's the emotions taking over. And our emotional mind works faster than our logical mind, which is the reason a lot of arguments begin. The emotions get away from us, and that is how we make those decisions. And people have done scientific studies on this. They've shown people branding, they've wired up their brains, and when you see branding, it lights up something that's sometimes associated with feelings of reward. They've shown people, using that Coke example again, drinking Coke or Pepsi gives them one thing, looking at the brand gives something else entirely going on there. So if you are a tourism operator, for example, you are most of the time marketing on those emotions. There's the rational things like safety and price and location, all those bits and pieces, but it's how it's going to make the person feel. And if you're talking about we're the most experienced operator, or we're the best operator, or this is our history, or this is why other people choose us, that's fine as one element of it, but it also needs to be just like, you're going to get thrilled, or you're going to get the relaxation, or those kinds of things. Tap into those emotions and persuade people in that way. And a lot of times where branding falls over is that it taps too much into those features and not the benefits that it gives to someone. There's an old marketing adage of, tap this correctly here, people don't buy the drill, they buy the hole. Some people absolutely do buy the drill, and those people you tap into their emotions of, don't you want the gruntiest, coolest thing? Of course you do. But the idea here is they're not buying the product necessarily, they're looking for the result of it. So if you're talking about the features of a product, that's not necessarily going to persuade someone. You can take this then a step further, is why do you want to buy the whole? Is it to hang a picture up? If so, what is that picture? What does that mean to someone? Is it to try building things with your kids and so on? Or if you're buying a drill instead of getting someone else to drill for you, what does that mean? And we can see that with plenty of big brands who do it quite blatantly now and trying to play to our emotions, particularly around Christmas time. The ads aren't about our sales or our range in store. They start telling a sappy story. If any of you from the UK, this has become a big tradition with various department stores playing it out, and here in New Zealand we're beginning to see it as well. Briscoe's, Mitre 10 and so on have all made these kinds of things. These emotional drivers, they make big differences, and this is ultimately what people are deciding a lot of their purchases on and where you need to be positioning your brands. So whenever you're talking about your company, or what it is you offer, think about it in maybe 3 different areas. It's what you offer, the feature, the brand, in this case the drill, well, it's got great torque, something, this battery's long lasting, these kinds of things, but then show what that means. If it's powerful, you're going to find it much easier to drill those holes around the place that you need. It's going to make your life easier. It's got a long battery life. That means you're going to be able to get more done in your day and spend your time on things that are more important to you. Sometimes these things should just seem obvious. Of course you can figure out that this feature means this thing, but it's not always the case. And sometimes people just like to feel understood, that you've identified they've got a problem and that you're trying to solve it with something. And then taking it through to that next level again, how it improves their life. Kind of already jumped on one there. If it's got a long battery life, it's more powerful. If it's more powerful, you're going to get through things faster. That leaves more time for life and your kids and that kind of thing. If it's an experience, if it's tourism, you've got time to get away on a holiday, make it count because you deserve it. This is going to give something more to your life. So add in all these elements. And if you need a practical starting point for this is going to add into your book as well, it's listing down all the different things you offer, what that does for someone and how it improves their life, and thinking about this for all the different audiences you might be talking to. And some of this you'll know just straight off. You can say it like anything. But put it down and then ask yourself, am I actually sharing this in my marketing? Does my website say it? Does my social media ads say it? When I advertise myself in a paid promotion, am I talking about the price or getting this deal, which could be enough to get through the door? But it also needs to show that it's right for them, and that's connecting through these kinds of things. We've done this with hotel operators, for example, saying, here are all the amenities you have in a room, and what does that mean for someone? So one recently talking with a hotel who decided they wanted to market to a golfing audience. So what could they say? Well, we've got a room where you can store your clubs, so it's going to be secure. In the room we have laundry facilities available for you, so you can wash your clothes and they're not going to stink for the rest of the day, and it's not going to alienate your friends that you're on the trip with. We've got plunger coffee, so in the morning you're going to be perfectly caffeinated before you get out on the green, all those kinds of bits and pieces. That might mean something completely different to a family audience, someone that also want to market for. All those amenities mean something, but they mean something else. So it's knowing how to talk about your different brand aspects, your different offerings in a way that is relevant to that audience. And to dive into a little bit of pop psychology on my next one, and because diagram's also great again, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Some of you may know this kind of thing, right? A crash course for you, those who don't. Maslow was interested in what drives people to do things. So this is quite relevant for marketing. At the very bottom, it was the stuff that you absolutely need to survive. You need air, you need water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction, all those kinds of things. Then we keep moving up, things that keep us safe, a sense of belonging, a sense of self-worth, and finally, the top of it all, which you're never actually getting to, being the most you can possibly be in life. If you are, I'm going to say, a food company, then you might say, well, food is here. That is my most basic need. If, again, I am serving up this delightfully beautiful pavlova, is it enough for me to say, well, I'm going to target those physiological needs, it's food? Well, it's not, because we eat other types of things. I could have rice, I could have fruit, I could have something actually healthy for me. But if I'm trying to sell someone a pavlova, it's up here. It's that sense of, reward because I deserve it. Or I'm a New Zealander, so having a pavlova is patriotic. Or maybe it's tying into the family because we have pavlova together at Christmas and that kind of thing. I don't think anyone in the room is probably selling pavlova. I did have a family friend who had a pavlova company, so it's plausible, but okay, not pavlova specifically. But then, with your business then, how do you go above and what does someone get from it? So, if you are, does someone want to give an example of the rule what they do? And then we can see what these higher ones might connect with. I know we have jet boating over here, so I can speak specifically to jet boating. So part of that might be, okay, so there's excitement and that can give me that. It can give me that sense of freedom or independence, or that I want people to know I went jet boating so I seem exciting and cool, or that's how I want to see myself, as someone who goes and tries to do something exciting. It takes it above just, I need to go on a holiday and find something to do. This gives me something more in life. Getting that out can sometimes be complex, but the idea is that you're speaking specifically to that need. And if you know that audience and what they're looking for, you can start to plant these ideas. These are the higher levels that you start getting from something. Other things you can tie into this is the why you're in business. When you know that, you can connect more effectively with your audience. And this is a key part of your branding. Sometimes people hide their story too much, or if they do, it's simply like, we got into this, we've been doing this for years, and there's a good story with it. But quite often, and particularly if you're a smaller business, the most interesting part is what gets you up in the morning to do it? What excites you about it? And how do you share that with an audience, because they are likely to get inspired and excited about that too. So examples from the past few weeks talking with people, kayaking operator who remembered how cool it was the first time they went kayaking and they wanted to share that experience with other people. Was it in their marketing? Not so much. But it should be part of that brand. We show you how to overcome your own limits to experience something new. Of course, do something new, New Zealand being the big tagline this year. These kinds of things are particularly relevant. But it also helped them connect them with people who were a little bit nervous about going kayaking for whatever reason. I was a beginner too once. I loved it and I want to share that love with you. And people begin to connect with that more than just being, this is a company that's looking to take me somewhere and you know, take my money and that kind of thing. There's a personal element into it. This was from our one, actually, the next one. A business that was offering shopping trips to women to make them feel fabulous about themselves. That was the why. That's what they wanted to get out of it. And in sharing that, that suddenly becomes something more personal. It's no longer the what of we offer shopping trips. We're in it because we want to make your life better, because we feel something from that. And sometimes it's also a good reminder to yourself, if you're ever struggling with it, to remind yourself, oh, I do this for a good reason, I get a buzz out of it. Another one, offering tours because they love the scenery and landscapes of New Zealand and they want to share that with people. They want to share that with more people, and once their passion comes out, people can feel that. Actually, that's been one of the biggest holes that I've found with tour operators is like when they have people there in person, they come to life. They've got the stories, they've got all those things that are out there, but you look at a website or social media and people don't see it. They're not connecting up the fact that that person has passion. What they sell isn't the fact that will take you to see these sites, that's part of it, but it's the perspective we give you. And that perspective is something that only we can offer. And so I'm going to turn it over to you again for a moment, to the again person next to you. Why did you get into this business, and why do you keep doing it? And if it's, you know, to make money and pass the time, that's absolutely fine as well. But think about what keeps you doing it, and even if you can frame that in terms of your customers or your community, something, all the better. So just a quick minute to do that, then I'll share why I do these things. All right, so why do you do what you do? And particularly like things, people, because I know there are people who work in the community or work with other people who host events, that kind of thing. We've got those in the room. Why is it you get excited about what you do? So, silence, yeah. Well, now that you've spoken, if you want to share any element there.
You want to share it with people. You want to share your passion.
Right, yeah. Share it, connect with people, show them a perspective on the world that you've gotten and that you think is important, yeah. And so whenever you're using your, this goes for your digital marketing in particular, make sure that comes out, because you have the disadvantage through this where you're not talking to someone face to face. You only have your words on a page and that kind of thing. So share the images of your team, of people who get involved, because those are part of the brand as well. It's not just the name, the logo, it's the people who meet with customers, it's who help organise things, the people who you might not even see when a guest or a customer or someone comes to you. Get that out there more and share that story more, particular for small businesses. That's where your advantage over the big businesses is. It's that personal touch. It's that the reasons you're in it for this year, more so than ever when we're trying to support local businesses. Make sure people get that, because it's one thing to say support local, but show them that why. Take them to that next step of why they should do it. And when they see people who are passionate about their businesses, passionate about what they do, it really makes a difference on that front. So that's my take on it. You can also think about your values, your mission, your purpose, all that kind of thing. And I'm using big brands as an example just because we kind of all know the names and it's an easier reference point, but I realise they have larger budgets and whatnot, but there is some relevance here. So, like, just to use a couple of examples, Whittaker's most trusted brand in New Zealand many years in a row, and that's because they do things well, and they reflect that in why they're in business. So this is a big part of their brand, is best is always better. So it's not just about we do the best chocolate, but we do things in the best way, and we believe in being transparent. And probably for most people, they buy into that because they see that, they recognise it, and also they like the chocolate at the end of the day. But Whittaker's is much more expensive than Cadbury, but people buy it. They have the largest market share. Could be the quality, but it's also all the image that they put into it as well. Cadbury, for their sake, is also saying that they're a force for good in the world. And to give Cadbury their due, and sorry, I am a Cadbury fan as well, so don't take this as me being anti-Cadbury. But like when they started, they were all about social good. They effectively invented Saturdays in the sense that they gave their workers an extra day off. They did housing for their workers, all this great stuff. And they talk about this here. But is that now what you'd see in New Zealand as being their values? Have they actually lived those values? Harder to say. They've closed down Dunedin factories, they've moved production overseas, they're now owned by a much larger international conglomerate. They can't really talk about these values honestly anymore, and they don't connect in the same way. So of course when
Are you able to explain there's a glass and a half in every one? I've got no idea what that means. I always hear that and I think, what a load of crap.
Well, just quickly, glass and the original branding, yeah. So back in the day, 1925, Cadbury said we've got a glass and a half of full cream milk in every block of chocolate that we sell, and that was a big selling point for people because it suggested purity. It brought it home to something that they were used to, having milk on the table every morning. It made it feel less like an indulgence and more like something that was healthy and natural and pure. And now, and now that's different. Like we wouldn't even think about that as being an influential factor. So they're trying to tie back to their history there and say that Cadbury is a part of everyone, and it's in this thing of generosity and goodness and so on. But no, it doesn't connect. It doesn't sell you on it. So these are useful things to do, but you have to be honest and it has to match who you actually are. Your values are both a reflection of who you are and who you want to be. It's better than their previous one, which was a passionate commitment to making everyone feel happy, which is quite difficult for a brand to achieve ultimately, but you know, that was nice. So be genuine, but realistically aspirational if you want to do on that front. So these are the whys and everything. So put these kinds of things, your mission, what gets you out of bed in the morning, and why that should matter to your customers. And if you ever need a little motivator for checking if what you're saying is relevant, ask yourself, why should I care? So what? How does this make a difference to me? This is your audience out there. Think of the most difficult person you can think of, stubborn, saying, so what? This is what I'm imagining you saying back to me throughout as well. The point is, that will help you define what's the next level when I talk about this. If I say it's important that we have experience, so what? Why does that matter to me? If I say we're locally owned, so what? Why does that matter to me? Bring those elements out in your brand, get specific in that kind of way. So you've got an idea of who your audience is, you've got an idea of what you offer and why that's different. Then it's about inserting a personality across the whole thing. So that's where you can ask yourself the question of, if your brand was a person, who would they be? So you got those personas earlier. This is who your audience is. This is a way you can start thinking about your brand, because that will help you decide, how do we put ourselves across? So if you're a brand, you might think, well, it's me. I'm the owner. It's kind of that, and that can be fine, but it's also about what's going to connect with my audience, because you might not be your audience. You might not be like your whole team, and ultimately it's got to be what's relevant to that audience. So think about, all sorts of questions you can put in there, but think about what's going to be relevant to them and might influence things, you know. So there can be specific things of what do they enjoy? Are they a leader or a follower? What are their hobbies? How loud are they? Are you more relaxed, or you're all out there on everything? There are some ways people have categorized these things into things like sage, explorer, magician, outlaw. These can be handy ways to think about things. I tend to think more it's just thinking about what kind of person do you want to be and how do you want to be perceived. These are very good things for large agencies and people who are creating very big, unwieldy brand personas. For you, it's just, how do I want people to perceive me? What do I want my reputation to be? Or what do I not want to come across as? You probably know of TV ads, for example, which are shouty and pushy, and you wouldn't want to buy from them. You don't want to be that. They do have an audience though, so depending on what your audience wants, maybe they want shouty and pushy. Think about what's relevant to you on those fronts. And yeah, you can create a personality off that kind of thing. Then that can also go into creating your voice that you share online. Voice is the personality, and that's where you create that, where you've got that, that barrier between the screen, someone looking at your website or social media and not being able to see you face to face. Thinking about what your voice is how you convey that brand. So think about things like your history, your purpose, your vision, your mission, your culture, your team, that kind of thing, or the things I alluded to. What do you want? What do we want our reputation to be? How does our audience speak? And how do we not want to be described? And these fill your ads, your online presence, just the idea of who your brand is generally. An example of one that's done that quite interestingly this year. I don't know if people have seen Dunedin's marketing campaign post-COVID. So like they knew that they knew the kind of audience they wanted. They knew how they wanted to speak to them. So they spun this pretty good Plan D thing. They knew that people had other plans and holidays and that kind of thing. They were reframing themselves for their right audience, and it worked for that audience that they were trying to strike and talk to on that front. So your voice could be many things, you know. Are you funny versus serious, formal or casual, respectful or irreverent, enthusiastic versus matter of fact? Probably to you, you've got an idea of where you sit on that spectrum. Having that down can give you a good idea of it. Or if you're really desperate for a lot of ideas, think of all the possible ways you could be described or not described. Most of the time people are going to say, we want to be friendly, that kind of thing. Let's say you're an event organizer, you know, you want want to be collaborative and welcoming and personalised and attentive and all those kinds of things. Occasionally some people will also want to be cheeky or challenging or something like that. We're going to push you to think about things. So think about where you are and maybe how you stand out from someone else. Because Dunedin there was saying everyone else is marketing on we're a nice getaway. There was places in the North Island who were saying like it's like being in the Napa Valley, that kind of thing. They were a bit cheekier with it and we're going with something else there. So yeah, a few different ideas you can go for on that one. Then it comes down to also the visual elements and stuff. And yes, I know this is probably what you think of when it comes to the brand. And I said earlier that a brand is more than just a logo, and it turns out the logo is more than just a logo as well. This is the reflection of who you are. It shapes the perceptions of who you are and so on. And it's nice because I've got the Selwyn from the land option here as well, which I'm sure the team could talk at length about. No, it's okay, you don't need to at the moment. But I know from looking through your guidelines, you know, you've got the reason, these are here, the mountains and so on, and all the elements there from the land. That's positioning that was obviously targeted to make this work and everything. Using those couple of examples earlier, your Whitakers and Cadbury, what do they have in common?
Chocolate.
That chocolate is the product. What are the logos? There's colouring. So there's two here. Cadbury has two options. Notably, their other one is purple, which they've actually trademarked their particular shade of purple. They say they own it. But yes, gold. So there's gold as quality, indulgence. It's getting that kind of thing across.
Sort of old-fashioned.
It's old-fashioned. It's history. It's scripted. It feels possibly even slightly personalised. Probably consciously you don't absorb it like that, but someone has written this. And of course the most famous brand in the world has done that as well. This is coming from roots which aren't big and massive corporations. These were small companies created by single people at some point. Then you've got, you know, your other big ones. Modern Amazon's going for ease and simplicity, and whether or not you consciously realise it, they have everything from A to Z as well. Plus it turns into a smiley face as well. So whenever someone's coming up with a logo, they're thinking of all these little elements that go into it. For many of you, it'll be just a case of finding the right font or typeface or that kind of thing, and that is one of the big things, important things. But you know, think about what your colours mean, how that gets across to different people. If you see a red logo, that can mean many things. It can mean passion, it can mean love, it can mean urgency, it can also mean danger, it can mean excitement. So depending on what your brand is, think about what those colours mean and everything there as well. But it's not just the logo within all those visual elements, it's thinking about your colours as said there, the fonts you use, imagery, graphic elements. We've talked a little bit about your audiences earlier. Does all the imagery you use reflect them? Is it what they're interested in? Do you reflect your audience within that? Ideally, if you can, use their images as well. If you have people attending your events or coming along with you to have an experience or that kind of thing, make sure you share as much of that out there, because people intrinsically trust other people, and when they see a brand that has visitors like them, they're going to have that stronger connection with them off that. And make it consistent through everything. And I don't know if it's because I'm kind of in this business where I notice the things sticking out, but having it flow through to your signage wherever you can, your website, collateral, I talk about like stationery and print advertising, that kind of thing, social media, emails, vehicles and so on. This can sometimes be a big ask, because let's say you've got your signage done at the start by a signwriter, it's professionally done. Later on you just need to add, and I see this so often, instructions to what to do in the bathroom. Not what to do in the bathroom. The dryer is under here. Find the dryer. The tap needs to be activated this way. Often in new builds, people don't realise actually how to use the tap, so they'll stick an A4 piece of paper written in Calibri, which is fine because it's functional. But in those elements, think about how you extend your branding to all those messages. And if that is too tricky, if you are getting a new visual brand at some point, make sure it's something that you can apply yourself easily without having to go out to someone else to do it. And so that's working with someone who's really going to explain it all, make it as accessible as possible, and break it all down there for you. If we're to use the analogy of it being like a friend or family member of something, if they suddenly start talking in a dramatically new way, or dressing in some completely new clothes, or they've shaved their head, you may ask, new look, cool, okay, what does that mean? And so if your branding isn't consistent, if it's going over the way, it can create that sense of it's not cohesive, or something's going on behind the scenes, or someone's running to keep up, that kind of thing. And so finally, the best way to get all this going is that if it's not just you working on your brand, if you have a wider team or you have customers or stakeholders, it's making sure you communicate that well with people. So part of the reason that I want to send you along a workbook after this is if it's not just you in the room making these decisions, it's bring those people along on the ride. Talk to them about who everyone thinks your customers are. Why it is they choose you, what gets you out of bed in the morning, how you think you should be presenting yourself. Your team is a big part of what that brand is. And if it comes things like coming up with visions and values and that kind of thing, that is something that everyone has to be involved in. Usually where companies fall down on it is as management decides, these are going to be your values now, this is what's important to us, so go out and do that. But it's got to be everyone coming along. You get the range of perspectives and that's where you get the best way possible. Plus then people know why it's important. They know why we use this kind of signage. They know this is why we talk to customers in this kind of way, because they feel part of it. They feel they've got that sense of ownership on it. And finally, if you do go along to an agency, they will charge you an awful lot of money to put together something called like a brand book or a brand guidelines, which as an agency I can say is a fantastic thing that you should absolutely spend lots of money on. But the secret is you can put together these kinds of things yourself as well. So putting together those things that says who our audiences are, what our story is, what our values are, brand identity, voice, how we use our logo, imagery we use, our colour palette, our elements, all those kinds of things, and examples of advertising. These are all things you can put down in one place. I've kind of flicked over them throughout my presentation, but a couple of examples of the things you'd look for is these are the colours we use, and you can get very pedantic on this, but it does make a difference. It's like and I use Skype again from the scraper because they've got an amazing brand book. I encourage you to look up Skype's visual brand book because it's very entertaining. Use our logo this way, but not this way. We use these kinds of elements in our advertising. For a destination client over in the States, it's like we use this kind of images for this audience. And so if you're trying to pick things out or you're giving that to someone else to come up with an ad or giving to staff, you can say, this is how we present ourselves and this is how we do it consistently. Always think about if you're going to get new visual branding, make sure it works everywhere. Make sure it's in your signage outside, but also your website, your social media. Oftentimes there's a lovely logo that you can't read when it's on something small, so make sure that works everywhere. Does it work for all your key audiences? Are they going to respond well to it? How does it connect with different cultures? So particularly if you work with a lot of international audiences, different colours, different shapes, those kinds of things can have quite different meanings than they do to New Zealanders. So think about how those things come across with it. There's a lot of those things to consider there in your branding, and those are some of the things we've talked about today. The last thing I would say is just whenever you're trying to put the advertising out there, challenge yourself to represent that brand as effectively as you can, to insert that in there, and to know that what might seem mundane and everyday to you can be really interesting to those key audiences out there. Every company has a story to tell. Share that story out there, and if you're putting up a social media post, you're not sure what to do, revisit this kind of stuff. Think about why you got in business in the first place, and this person that I'm talking to on the other side of the screen, if they were here right in front of me at this point, What would I say to persuade them to come along, to book an event with me, to let me organise an event for them, to come along on a trip with me, to buy my products, to come along and experience what I experience the world as? Think about these things and push that across, and that is the key part of your brand. Knowing what makes you special and knowing why that's important to an audience and making them understand that. And with that, I think I've about blitzed through my time. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate you coming along this afternoon. As I said, we're going to send a workbook out to you to fill in a few elements more for you. I believe next is networking and things. I'll hand it over. Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you.